I'm Chris Glazer. I'm the owner of Boundary Waters Kitchen and Market. We opened as this brand at the end of September. We took over Minskis Market. We initially started as a catering company. It was Tad Dreschler and I. Tad and I had met. We crossed paths over the years down in the cities at Birchwood Cafe, at Travail, a couple of other places in the area, and him and I were working at Insula. I was tending bar, he was cooking there. I had kind of give some background, but we decided we wanted to do something catering involved because we noticed there was a massive pull in the market up here for that. So essentially, we just started this thing up in April. We rented out the kitchen at Mitska's, and over the course of the summer, acquired the financing to purchase the building and the business from Mike and Mary, and took over at the end of September, did a little renovation, and then reopened it with pretty much everything kind of integrated together in this. So kind of what I'm going to go through. I'll give you a bit of history on where I came from, some things that were inspirations and influences for me, kind of how we got to where we are now, and a couple other points here. Let you ask all the questions you want. So I am surrounded by food my entire life. Let's just put it that way. I kept it PG. There's lots of photos of me running around in my diaper covered in flour. My mother is first generation Italian in this country. I grew up with my grandparents around me quite a bit. And food was integral to just our existence growing up. Everything was lived in the kitchen. I love to bake. She bakes. She's a heck of a cook. I pull a lot of her recipes into what we do now. Tad does as well with his family as well. We felt that was kind of something that we wanted to. Yeah, I think it fits the context of where we are essentially. So, but anyways, I grew up in Apple Valley, just south of Minneapolis. Went to elementary school, high school there until I was 16, and then went to a military school for 2 years. Was a bit of a rough around the edges kid. I did well in school until I wanted to skateboard and snowboard and all that. So I grew up playing sports. I played music. I was kind of a loner. I didn't really have a lot of friends. I liked to just read and play music and do my sports and things of that nature. And that's kind of where I came from on that. I went to college at Mankato at Minnesota State University. I double majored in English and history in another life, it seems. I wanted to be a teacher, and I was going to go for an MFA in writing, and I got married towards the end of college. My ex-wife was a microbiologist, and I got accepted to the University of Oregon for writing out there, a master's in form poetry was my focus, actually. She got accepted to a joint master's doctoral program, and so we ended up in Nebraska. And as far as cooking goes, I started at 13 years old in a bakery washing dishes at Diane's Bakery in Burnsville, Minnesota. I would kind of skateboard over there after school and clean up everything, all the old like the little push press that they would fill with, the jelly-filled donuts would already be caked because they got it out of there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was 3 in the afternoon by the time we get there. But I did that with my best friend for a few years, and then I just started working in restaurants left and right. And it was working at the Chalet at Buck Hill. It was, working at Circus. Circus Pizza was my first line job ever, was making pizzas at Circus. All through college, I cooked, I bartended, I served. It was just, I could always find a job in the business, and it was just something that I enjoyed. Primarily. Once I got to Nebraska, with the kind of college career derailed a little bit. I never wanted to go for technical writing, and that's all Omaha or University of Nebraska Lincoln never offered. So I was kind of like, I tried to get into the brewing world. Came to the realization I'm not very good with the chemistry aspects of things. So they found out that I could cook, and so I started working for Laszlo's in Lincoln, Nebraska, if anybody's familiar with them, Imperium Brewing. They were kind of the Surly of Nebraska back in the day. They found out I could do the catering. I had done a lot of that already. And so I was kind of pegged for just bulk production of stuff. And I did that, and then I started kind of finding upper echelon restaurants to work in. My taste kind of changed and adapted. I ran across an old friend and in Omaha. I started going to the culinary program because I didn't really know anybody there. I was like, it was just a way to kind of meet people. And I'd already gotten, I didn't have to do any of the general coursework or anything like that. So I was able to dive directly into both the savory and the baking program. And I blasted through the program in about the course of the year. I primarily did it for learning on the baking end because I really enjoy baking and I just wanted to learn some of the finer points of that stuff. And I started working at a restaurant called the Grey Plume. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Omaha and remembers them. They were one of they were the ones that kind of pushed me into fine dining. I was the pasta guy. I would get there at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'd roll out all the pasta. And I was doing that. I was going to school. I was also working at Jack Binion's Steakhouse in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and cutting my teeth as the saute cook down there, the saucier. That's kind of where I got my formal training. The school didn't really give me the training. It was on the job. I was working almost two full-time jobs at that point while going to school and commuting back and forth between Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska. And it was an interesting go. But after that, I ended up moving back home. I always seem to come back. I bounced around. I've gone, I lived in Mankato. I lived in Chicago for a little while, Lincoln, Nebraska, but Minnesota's home. My folks are still down in Apple Valley. And I think I can't really talk any further until I explain the importance of this restaurant to me. I worked for Travail for 10 years. Travail was, I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. They're in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. That's where they got their start. They own a slew of restaurants now. Pick Ate My Pizza, Novell Brewery. They own the Gray's Food Hall over in Washington and Minneapolis. They have Pig Ate My Pizza, the Minnesota Barbecue Company. I was there from pretty much the beginning of Pig Ate My Pizza for roughly a decade with those guys. It was an incredibly intense experience. I mean, it's called Trail Collective, and it's a collective for a reason. Everybody there was no hierarchy, though there is. The three kings that ran it, Mike, James, and Bob. They own Long Branch up in Winton. And there is some other attachment with this restaurant, but this thing was constantly fluid, constantly changing, and it was just kind of as engaging as you can humanly get in a restaurant. Full kitchen was an open kitchen. There were 3 different restaurants running at one time. You would have a U-shaped table like this with 18 people. You do 2 seatings a night at that. One of us would take over that menu for 3 to 6 months, and you develop it however you want it. I had a bunch of guys, like a watermelon friend that did like a whole lot of ballot menu. I did a 50s diner, but elevated, because I was infatuated with phosphate sodas and soda jerks and all sorts of different things, and I was getting into that. But then there was another one that was 2 flat seatings of 50 every single night, and it was 3 to 3.5 hour meal. Everything's an open kitchen. There was no delineation between like roles there. So during the day, I would be prepping. I was a charcuterie guy for a long time. I cured sausage, did a lot of meat curing, just fabrication, all that kind of stuff. I would prep all that during the day, and then I'd go and bartend at night. And I got real good with spirits, and I got real good at kind of curating craft cocktail menus and things of that nature. But then they'd rip you away and they'd throw you on some other station, throw you on some other thing. And I bring that quite a bit into what we're doing at Boundary Waters Kitchen and Market. I think it's imperative that everybody learns how to do everything in that place. So I am starting to slowly just move people into different roles. I let them get comfortable for a minute, and then let's put you over there and see how you do. We're not going to let them fail. We're not going to let them fall down. We help them the whole way through, Tad and I. But it's something that I learned from this place that really influenced me. It was the constant change. It was the constant be creative aspect to what we did in this restaurant that I'm bringing in here. Anybody that's come to any of our pop-up dinners will see something similar to this in a very small format, essentially. We kind of we do the same thing. We did a big wedding for the Anna Lee family this past summer, and they found out where I worked, and they're like, "We want a menu like this," and it was really odd because I hadn't cooked for many years in this capacity to rewrite it, but it kind of spurred something in me, and it was kind of glad that I did it. We ended up doing a menu. I pulled out all my old notebooks. I was going through old set lists, and I started applying this to it. Tad's very familiar with this restaurant. His background's way more French based. He worked for Oceanair, Meritage. I was kind of just all over the board. So I can't talk about any of this without mentioning these guys. Just they to this day, I got a call. I got a call. We were done. Tad and I did this all last summer. It was just the two of us. Came the end of August, we were gassed. And they called me up and they're like, "It's the 15th year anniversary." They're like, "Would you like to come down and eat?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And I'm like, "Can I bring a friend?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, but we thought you were going to come down for the week and cook." And I'm like, "Mike, man, I don't know if you notice what I've been doing." And he knows what and so that. And he goes, "Well, we got we got the luxury dog on the menu." They had a bunch of my old menu items on there. And these are guys that I see as mentors that I respect, that stuck through me, some kind of rough personal issues that I went through over the years with these guys. It was never really an easy go for me for a long time there. Just dealing with life in general, and a mind that seems to go tangential quite a bit, which you'll probably see in this conversation for sure, which you've already seen. Anybody, Dave knows all about that. He saw that yesterday morning. And any meal that you've ever eaten, like just too much going on up here. So, but they're instrumental, and they're what led me up here initially. I came up with Nick and Maddie when they did the last iteration of the chocolate mousse. I had been out of work for a while. I had suffered an injury about 8-9 years ago. I shattered my right hand. 4.5 millimeter plate running down at train track. Lost all sorts of motion and mobility. Then I had 3 other nerve damage surgeries and carpal tunnel surgeries and all sorts of stuff. I couldn't hold a knife anymore, so I got into consultation. I started consulting kind of higher end bar programs and cocktail programs. And then I started working at Chowgrove Catering at one point. And I was the warehouse manager, and I did all the logistical organization, made sure that 300-person event went out right and had all the proper vessels that everything had to go in and all that, and did floral arrangement and all sorts of different things. But I was out of work for a while, and Nick and Maddie approached me and asked me if I would come up along with another gentleman, Nate Stefanski. And so we moved up here. It will be 5 years in April that I've been up here. I came up here, I worked the summer with them, and I've been coming up here since I was a kid. I have family friends that live out on Fall Lake, the Dusages. I went to school with Steve. He was a really good friend of mine. And so I've been coming up here. I remember when they used to fire the fireworks over this way, and coming up, sitting outside the Jello and watching them on 4th of July, actually. And I remember when Trish owned the chocolate mousse, and she had all the pies, and I remember on my old 1980s Tony Hawk skateboard coming down the hill, and meeting them for a piece of French silk pie or whatever the heck it was. But that's how I ended up here. I did the first summer with them. And I kind of wanted to get out of the restaurant business. I was kind of done with it. I can do it. It's all muscle memory. It's not an issue for me to work in the business. It was just, education was always something that I, wanted to attempt, pursue. I have that ability to train. I was always kind of pegged that way in all the jobs that I had, because I have somehow had some patience, which is rare in my world, more often than not. But I ended up approaching the Vermilion Country School my second winter up here, because I was working at the boathouse and I wasn't getting that many hours, and I was looking to kind of just supplement something. And Mary McGrain actually brought me in to do a full week. They had a grant, and we devised a menu, and we got a group of like 10-11 kids that got to hang out in the kitchen for the whole week with me. We did all this fun stuff. I taught them how to make tortellini. I brought in the pasta sheeter. We taught them how to make tortellini. We did like a full. They had a powwow the last day, so we got together with some folks off Nap Lake, and we're able to do some traditional food, and just it was really interesting. And they approached me and they were like, "Well, do you want to part-time cook next year?" And I said, sure. And they're like, well, submit your resume and all this. And so I submit my resume and they saw the degrees and my education background. And they were like, well, we need a history teacher and a science teacher. And they're like, what about being the science teacher? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, yeah, I'll take the history one. So we pushed my licensure through. I got licensed and I was the history teacher 7th through 12th grade for 2 years there. And yeah, after about like the second month I was there, they're like, well, you want to just be the culinary director too? And I'm like, sure. And so I was basically doing the 2 full-time gigs there. I would teach 2 classes, I would run in and I would prep. And then I'd come back and I'd teach a bunch of electives, and it would generally be like, I did like the history of American horror films and like the history of punk rock and like, I don't know, I'm a nerd. I like anime. I did like the history of Japanese anime and then how that led into American anime and all this fun stuff. So, but during my time there, I absolutely loved it. It was out of my league as far as, I mean, like I was not trained to deal with certain situations that crop up when you're dealing with kids that, might be suffering some certain issues and different things. But I was very effective with those students, and they gave me pretty much a group, anywhere from 8 to 12. They didn't want to ever go to class. They didn't want to do anything. And the deal was they would basically become my prep cooks, and they would help develop the menus, and they would write the menus, and then we would, give them a tangible skill, like, and teach them how to do stuff. In the process, their grades started going up. I started tutoring them in every subject. They were able to, they had some of these kids that just don't have confidence and stuff like that gain some confidence because they're very tactile, a lot of them, and it worked for them. And some of them it was overwhelming, if you have sensory issues and things like that. I kept it loud like a regular kitchen. It's blaring heavy metal or punk rock, and there's pans clanging around, and it's communication. But they got to do all sorts of interesting things, and I was able to find some grants to do some farm to table. We wrote out some grants and we're able to get about 15K in, to be able to start sourcing from local producers. And it got real interesting there for a while with that. And then the second year we were there, I started tying in a lot of history into it. And like the first unit I did was French occupation in Vietnam, and explaining how occupations and how certain things affect, certain other cultures' food through the years. And so if you go get banh mi, if you look at a pate in Vietnamese cooking, like that's all French inspired. That, they were just simply using those techniques, based off of the product that was being, sourced in that locale. So that was quite interesting. And in the process of that, I started doing all these kind of just freelance catering events. And it started with it was an omelet bar for the St. Paul's Church in Sedan. And they were like, hey, you want to do an omelet bar for Mother's Day? Sure. And it was on one of those little ceramic home stoves in the basement of that church. And I brought like 3 of my students along with me, and we just railed it out. And it was kind of interesting. It was difficult, but we started doing Thanksgiving dinner every year for them. And feeding upwards 90 to 100 people, people that, might not have the money to do it themselves and stuff like that. And I always, that's something that's important to me, is just helping out on that side in that way, if I'm capable of doing it. The kids got a kick out of it. I would hire the students to do all the prep work with me. I'd actually pay them, because I was charging them, but it was low key how we were doing it. One of my students' parents bought the Tower Cafe, right around that time. Jen and Bob were gonna, and Jen approached me and was like, hey, we've never run a restaurant before, never done any of this. Would you like to, help us get that off the ground? And I'm like, sure. My advice, if you ever go to open anything in this business, please have done it beforehand. It makes your life so much easier. There's so many variables that it's, unless you know it, it's real difficult. And that's not impossible, but it's difficult. And they're thriving. They're doing a great job over there now. So anyways, I helped them get the Tower Cafe off the ground. Started showing them, things here and there. And then kind of towards the end, I ended up doing Save the Boundary Waters. And I brought Tad in. Yep. St. Boundary Waters garden party 2 years ago, and the tax man came. And I was like, I need to start a company based off this because I'm going to be paying this out of my own personal coffers. And so that's where Tad kind of came in. He started helping me at the cafe. He actually got him an apartment there. He had just kind of been bouncing around a little bit. And then I was just like, I just started booking these freelance gigs. I was bartending for like the Boy Scouts for their fundraising dinners. I was just doing all sorts of different things. And I'm like, there's nothing up here. And so that kind of led us into looking into this. And we were going to do this as a food truck first. And as we were we're looking around, and we have some contacts out in the cities. And Justin Sutherland was one of the guys. You probably actually know anything about them down there. He used to own Handsome Hog. He's been on Iron Chef. He's an old friend of ours. I grew up with the guy in Apple Valley. We used to play basketball at the park together and stuff. And he had an old food truck, and we started looking into it. And we're looking at it, and we're like, man, like this is expensive. First of all, and the logistics behind the food trucks. I mean, up here, I want to run year round. I don't want this to be seasonal. I want a year round job. I want to do what I do year round. And that doesn't allow for it up here. And the logistics behind it, it adds extra hours to your day. I'm not getting any younger, and lugging things up and down into hundreds and hundreds of pounds of equipment and food is just not feasible with the way my body likes to function these days. And I don't want to burn out any young kids because I know what it was. That's what Trail was. It's like, hey, hire them at 18 and they can work for a while until you break them in their 20s and things go on and whatnot. So that's kind of what led to it. And then we were just looking around for the commissaries, like I said, and Mike and Mary were amazing through this entire process. I couldn't have asked for anything better. They were so incredibly accommodating. It doesn't happen that way. And so everything just kind of lined up, and we ended up doing what we started doing. So kind of at the point of, you guys kind of are familiar with what I do, most of you in this room. Catering is the core of what we do. It's my favorite thing. I like being able to work with all the different community organizations I've gotten a chance to. Lacey's been incredible to work with. I work with Young Live. We're going to do their luncheon again. We're going to do the ECR art auction again this year. It's really the core of what's driving what we're trying to do. But there's so many other components to what we need to do. And like I've been mentioning, my interest is in creating jobs that are sustainable in a way. This is all brand new to me. This side of a business. You pull the chef out of the kitchen. I don't cook anymore, hardly. You get me every once in a blue moon, you'll get me back there. And I live there, so 3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I get a wild hair up my butt and I'm down there baking something. Like literally in my pajamas. I do put pants on, so. Sorry. One of the things that we are pursuing is a cookie company. That's my Noni, Jenny Carollo. She had a biscotti recipe that has been passed down through the family. And it's good. It's not that hard. Some people in here have actually tried it. I think I've been doling them out because she brought in a bunch of samples of it. But this is something she's always wanted, and she's getting up in years, as well as my father. And he's like, this is something that can become a revenue stream in the wintertime when you're on your off hours. This is something that can be distributed online, and we're going to do wholesale distribution with it. It can be online. It's boutique-y in a way. And essentially, that's what it is. That's actually the cameo of her that was in the hallway by all the bedrooms when I was a little kid. And I spliced a PowerPoint into this one just for some reference on it. But we basically had the heritage recipe, and my mom kept doing all these disparate recipes when she wanted to do like a limoncello one, or she wanted to do a cappuccino one. And I'm like, Mom, why don't you just use the same recipe and just change the inclusions? And she's like, with her mind. And so she started doing it, and she showed up 2 weeks ago with like a sample of a bunch of them. And so essentially, this company was created a couple of weeks ago. We filed for it. My dad and I are designing some prototype pans to see how we actually turn this into a production process. And then we kind of have, seasonal roadmap that we run through with this. And we hope to have this up and rolling somewhere in the September, October range this year. We are working with Northland SPDC and Catherine Lottie through them. And the intriguing thing about this is that this is considered a manufacturing job. And there are subsidies available if we do this right, that we can create 2 full-time jobs based off of this and the next company that I'm gonna kind of show you guys. It does include us building a production kitchen up here. I've already outgrown my space. I am good at dealing with small spaces, but I've outgrown it already. The production we do between the deli, the grab and go, all of our take and bake options that we have has surpassed that. Like I need freezers bad, very badly, and especially coming into summer. There's some pre-order grill kits that we're going to be doing and offering. We're partnered up with Timber Bay Lodge. There's some new ownership out there, and they basically, when they book their cabins and when they book their houseboats, they're able to kind of order a grill kit. It's like 2 pounds of Hellstrom's beef, working with the new owners of Pep's Bakery down in Virginia to kind of customize some packaging and stuff like that for, you get hot dogs and they only give you 8 and you get 12 in the pack or vice versa. So we're working on getting that all compiled, and essentially they can pre-order these kits. We package them up, deliver them once a week out there to them. They're also going to clone our grab and go case with our deli salads, our sandwiches, our salads and things of that nature. And it's kind of a pilot program in a way too. But with all that happening, a production kit, and with this happening, it's going to require a production kitchen. So we're going to eventually be looking for some land, plop down a pole barn, insulate it, and design it to spec for what we need to do. And there is expansion intended with all of this in the long-term plans that we're looking from 3 to 5 years down the road on this. Another interesting part of this that we're looking into, well, that it's already in process, is tea and imports. My father is an interesting man. He is an engineer by trade. He came up in the 70s working for IBM, Unisys, and any of the big boys, Honeywell, any of the ones that you could ever imagine. His expertise is in that world and developing businesses. He is on the back end of this, helping us with a lot of this. When I was growing up, he was vice president of Fujitsu, large Japanese company. He ran the American office. I grew up with a lot of Japanese around me, and a lot of food, a lot of culture and stuff like that. It was really interesting. But over the years, once he left there, his business interests maneuvered into Taiwan and into China. And he has a family that basically a second family to him and us. I mean, I talk to them every single time I'm home for a holiday. We try to get on a Zoom meeting with the family. And Xiaoping is the mom's name, and she runs an English speaking school in the middle of the country. And in exchange for her tutoring my father on Mandarin, he tutors their son Yu Fei, who's about 5 years younger than me. Also an engineer. He tutors him in English and upper level calculus, all this kind of stuff. But over the years, they've developed quite a bit of trust and good relationships. And through this, he's been able to get tied in with this tea producer in China. They produce high-end black tea and green tea. They also are working on a tea brew, like a beer, like a tea beer of some sort. But so what we are attempting to do with this, he's already licensed for it, for the importation. I have about 20 more hours on getting my licensing, and then I'm going to work on getting a HACCP license, which is essentially protocol for writing off, food production policies and things of that nature. But the goal of this would be to import. So the way their packaging is all nested and beautiful little boxes, and then you have another box and then a bag and all this kind of stuff. And it does not fit the American market. It's a lot of waste. And so what we would end up doing is just importing this in bulk and pallet by the pallet. And we repackage it for the American market and we distribute it wholesale. We'll sell it through our outlet, but also this is something that it goes along in hand with the cookie company that, you know, these are products that can go on any shelf. In any grocery store, in any market technically. So we're gonna start here and just start kind of pushing outward. It's the goal for that. In the middle of all this, because we have the opportunity to import whatever the heck we want, I have a lot of interest in Southeast Asian cuisine and things of that nature. And I have some interesting coffee. I'm actually looking at there's some coffee roasters that we're looking at purchasing possibly. We might integrate some coffee business into this as well. That's kind of cropped up in the last couple of weeks. And it's something we're just monitoring. If it looks like it's a good deal, we are going to jump on it because it would be very interesting. But there are all these companies based on Minneapolis, and I use one in specific called Great Chow. And they're an importer, and they import fine cheeses, meats, you know, things, a lot of things from France, Spain, and Italy. I have a lot of interest in that as far as the culinary goes too. I love like Iberico ham, you know, just different things like that. And something that's kind of popped into my brain as we've been going through this process with the tea, and whatnot. The tea is weird. Like the Chinese government called me. Like I had to talk to somebody from the government. They had all these questions. My dad was just answer the questions. Okay. And they have to vet you. I mean, and trust is extremely difficult to build with these people. They're not one to really let Americans in all that often. And he's got 20 years built on it. So, but one of the things that I would really like to do is possibly become like a Northern Minnesota distributor for imports, when it comes to the culinary world. And we have some really interesting restaurants that are starting to crop up here. There's the guy out in Grand Rapids, for the life of me, I can't remember the restaurant, but he's up for a beard this year. Duluth has got some interesting things. I'm very fascinated with what the Duluth Grow Company does down there with OMC and how they source and what they do. And in addition to trying to procure as much as I can locally, I think it's interesting to get these kind of products into the market up here where they are difficult to obtain. And that's kind of what we've predicated a lot of what we're doing. You see this in our menus. You know, the Korean barbecue bowl is because him and I just miss that dish, and I can't get it within 4 hours a year, and you know, an 8-hour round trip. So these are kind of things that we're really kind of looking into, and on that, we're able to create jobs with it. And being able to work with some of the economic redevelopment. I've worked with Emily Rose at E-Fund as well, quite a bit, looking into these different things. You know, since we started with 2 people. I am about to go to 5 full-time employees and 2 part-timers. I hired a friend, you know, and I'm kind of, there's a little nepotism involved in some way, which can be a perk and a not, you know, if they can run roughshod over you, but which they do. I let them. But you know, I hired Sammy Churchill to be our bookkeeper, and she didn't have any of the skill set for it. And 6 months later, we sat down with the accountant 2 days ago, and he goes, "Oh, the books are perfect," you know. And she's learning a new skill at that, and it's giving her a different option. You know, she's a 3rd-time mother, but she's got a baby, little Theo, which I'm sure you've seen bouncing around in our market. We've kind of kept him out of there lately because he's teething and he's gotten cranky, but he's still a ham, so he is. But we were able to bring in. I brought in a few of my students, and they work for me now. They're graduated. And Emma is turning into a fine little line cook where she was baking for me for a little while, but we got her up and running on the line now. And I brought in a good friend of mine that had worked for Boathouse for a long time and was just looking for something different. And so we brought him in, and he's got interesting background. He likes to grow things. He's very good at growing things. And there's some interest in doing microgreens and different things like that. If we can kind of start moving that way. And then, you know, I got Callie Morrow. I don't know if you've ever had that You Betcha Booch. She used to sell it up at the farmer's market. I'm kind of playing incubator for her. She's going to be it's kind of a test run with the Department of Ag, and the wholesale and distribution. She makes the kombucha. Hers is a little different because you do have to worry about the alcohol content. There is testing involved, all this stuff. And so essentially I was just like, can I hire you? I need you to cover Saturdays so I can perhaps have like half a day for life and do my laundry. And so she's turned into a baker and she's kind of glommed onto this. And she's like, I would love to work at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I'd love to smell muffins at 6 o'clock when I wake up. So it works out really well. Well, we're playing incubator, so we refiled her LLC. It had lapsed on her, and she hadn't kept up with it. But we got her back up and running on the cottage license, and we're trying to get her a wholesale distribution license as well. And she's just going to utilize some storage space that I have in the basement to get that up and running. So I mean, that's the intent. I mean, I like what I do. I'm tied to it in every which way. I live upstairs. I eat, live, breathe this thing. It's nonstop with me, which is it can be maniacal at times, but we like it. We enjoy where we're at. I want to see this place thrive because I can see, working in the restaurant industry in 4 or 5 short years. I've worked in almost every restaurant here. I worked for Rockwood, I worked for Boathouse, I worked for Tower Cafe, I was out at Neighbor's Barbecue at one point. I mean, it is so hard to find good help up here, and especially in this business with it being so kind of transient in a way up here, and only really having that 5 months of, to make your scratch. You get 5 months, and then on that off season, everybody gets cut, everybody goes down. You bulk up to 45 people in the summer, and then you're down to a 15-person skeleton staff come wintertime. And housing is an issue with a little bit of this, and that's something that we've got in our brains too. If we do end up expanding or anything like that, I would love to expand the market. I've already outgrown that space. I'm playing with it as much as I humanly can, and I've reached my limit. There's probably 2 more fixtures I can put in there, which I'm hoping to put in a produce cooler and then move some of that back, and really start focusing on the farm to table stuff that I've been doing, and some of those grants that I've been interested in writing. But I would love to expand it out to be something similar to the size of what they have in Virginia. I do not want to incorporate it into a co-op. I want to curate this myself, and I want to curate this based off of what I'm seeing and the feedback that I hear from the community here. I think it should be a little more specific because of where we're at and with some of the background that we have and the Scandinavian background that we have. And, just I think it needs to be focused in that way and not just be a generalized, like, this is what you get. And because that's how the co-ops often operate, at least the ones I've been looking into infra. But they make you buy the lot and you have to have all of this come in this week. And, a lot of times it's not going to sell up here. I have a unique position where my cooking background and being a chef for so many years, I understand what's going to move and what's not going to move, and I'm learning it real fast. And I got real upset with some of the big time vendor that we utilize, which is Unify. They don't take any mind for the small guy. If you're not in a large metropolitan area, if you're not, ordering $50,000 an order, they could care less. I have no human contact. I have nobody trying to go like, hey, look at this item. I have a hard time with them. So I was just like, well, I'll just go straight to the source of all this. And I like talking. And so I'm not shy, and I will approach anybody for this stuff. And that's really where I'm at with it. That's kind of another picture of the tea fields. They actually own and operate a hotel out there as well. He's got some beautiful photos of all that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Summer is about to get insane for us. Like I said, this is the last summer I'm going to cook, hopefully. I'll be in that kitchen kind of getting these systems designed and really, fluid. And after that, I'm going to be handing it all off to Tad. As far as, I've already kind of handed it off to Tad on that end. I still, I'll interject. There's always going to be something like, you're going to have an Italian sub on the menu. It's just, if you have to. You have to have this particular bread, like I want this cheesecake, that kind of thing. But outside that, I want everybody that I work with to be creative and, kind of do these things. I guess on that note as well, I'm actually very curious and if anybody has any understanding of this, but I know that there is a culinary program out in Hibbing And we would be a phenomenal place to do an extern or an internship with, just with the sheer amount of different things and avenues that how we're approaching this. So, I think at that, I'll just open up the floor. Do you guys have any questions?
We only have the one microphone today, so we can do questions, but we're just gonna hold. Yeah, Lily?
Are you gonna keep the grocery store aspect?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are things that you can get in Virginia, but it's a long way to go.
No,
So
that's where the expansion comes in. And this is where, when I took over the place, the inventory the data was corrupted. Just put it that way. It didn't go into my new POS systems right. I have no idea what was sold whatsoever. Half of the items were under an open food item. Doesn't tell me anything. Now, the next one was bananas. And the next one was like apples. And like, I know bananas and I know apples, so, but some of these things, some of this canned goods, some of this stuff. The size that I find myself, I'm trying to get at least enough in each little segment that I can with the small size that I'm in. We really, really do want to direct a lot of it into our own food production. I can utilize all organic, produce in a lot of this stuff. The take and bake and the grab and go is huge, but the market is going to be, it does not go away. In fact, we've been able to expand some offerings on it. It looks a lot different, and the way that the space is utilized is a lot different. But we do definitely, when I would talk to Mary, I'm like, hey, what were your average orders? And yada yada. She's like, oh, you're way over what I was doing. And I'm like, but I'm also looking around at specialty boutique things. I'm all over the internet trying to find different companies that I can source things from. I am huge on taking recommendations. One of the things I will do is if there is something that you don't see on there and something that that's not necessarily really perishable. That's one of the things that we have a problem with in the wintertime here. And this is my first year, this is like month 4 of doing this. I never thought I'd be a grocer. It's weird. It's weird. Because I'm looking at this from the lens of how I used to do costing from a chef perspective and a restaurant perspective, the margins are completely different. All of it's different. It does have carryover. And so one of the things we do is like, if you wanted to order like a case of any split pea soup, I have a gal that likes to order the low sodium split pea soup. And we'll give you 10% off the case. I'll order it for you. And we'll do it that way. There's so many little niche items that I might just sell one of them. And it doesn't make sense sometimes to carry that yet. Not until I can get a higher volume coming through the doors. And that's only going to happen with expanded space for the actual market. So I do know that the building next door is for sale.
Sure.
And I know Heather very well, that's running 5 times in there, and her and I have talked about certain things. There's also another caveat to the building next door is there's an event space upstairs. There's no ballroom up there with a stage, which plays into what we do quite a bit. So I am not exploring that yet. We have to get other aspects of this business stabilized, but yes, the market will not go anywhere.
I'm interested in your talk about potentially becoming a border. Would your base operations be in Neely, and would that create more jobs?
I want to keep all this stays in Ely. That's the idea.
When I get on board, I'm like, big business.
No, this is small scale for specialty imports. This is like buying ham that costs $20 a pound. This is stuff that there would be some distribution jobs created, somebody that would have to drive truck, somebody that would have to do that. With the tea importation and that packaging requires hands to be able to do that. Like I said, the initial is that we're operating on is bringing on 2 full-timers that are outside of what I already have employed for the market and the catering company now. But I want to keep it all in Ely. I have no interest in leaving this, so. Yes.
Are you yourself have a refined palate for tea consumption, and do you anticipate
offering any like educational programming to educate the consumer on the teas that you're selling?
That is, I know tea a little bit. That's where Cali comes in quite a bit, actually. This is where I have to defer. I know a lot. I have a refined palate when it comes to food. The coffee, well, put the coffee and bulked into this as well. I was, looking at Moss and I'm like, Moss is kind of developing, I just hired, Glazer to, kind of program, they're kind of gonna be a jack of all trades for me. But they love coffee and so they're doing that. And like, I can taste it, but that's gonna be an education thing that I am gonna have to pursue on my own as we do this. And I've already made some contacts with some resources down in the cities where we're gonna be working with Up Coffee a little bit, and they do have some aspects of tea. Because I was just looking at this, I'm like, all right, I really, I know a little bit. Callie knows a little bit, but yes, that is definitely something that's included in that. So we'll be able to, with that company down in the cities, they have all sorts of educational aspects. They can help us design recipes. They can do all sorts of different things for us. And they kind of fit our speed with what we're doing, and they already know Moss, which is kind of a nice thing. So, on the account of creating jobs, we brought in Moss, 18-year-old kid, and they've blown me away in the last 3 weeks that they've worked for me. It's incredible. They've been able to program both my POS systems. They know how to do order intake. They know how to do all these different things. And one of the things that we have them now learning is coding. And they're building me my own CRM because oh boy, I need very specific organizational components for this, booking of events and all the different things that we have going on, especially if we're going to start collaborating with these with a resort or something of that nature. And I need a database, and when I start looking at them, for purchase, they're expensive per month and they might satisfy one or two requirements. They don't satisfy all of them. So, I have a father that knows how to do all this stuff, and he's just like, we're just gonna build our own and we're gonna teach somebody to do it. And then that's where they came in. So.
Chris, I'm curious, just following up on, or you may have noticed the current administration is a little confused about tariffs and the ups and downs.
They'll be gone eventually.
Yeah, so, how does a guy plan for the next 3 years, import business, especially from China?
We're gonna leave that to my father.
Okay.
He's the one that's organizing this side of it right now. I can't even, like I said, I started taking the classes on that. It is gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
Actually, the coffee roasting that I brought up briefly, there's a company that resides on the North Shore that is about to go kaput. Very old company that's been around, and they distribute to institutional or institutions, so like hospitals and schools and things of that nature. The tariffs throttle them based off of their old models and their old methods. Now we're in a sense where we're at the ground floor on it, where we're looking at it without having any historical aspect to it, where your business was built around it in one particular way. This is where that company is going down, is because they were so accustomed for, since 1919, I believe they were a company, of doing something the same way. And then when you have a shock to the system like we're seeing right now, that's definitely going to affect it. It's something that we're going to have to be conscious of as we go through. To answer your question, that is my father's, and because that was my first question to him. I was like, "Are you serious? What's going on?" He goes, "We address it when we have to address it."
Have you found some like resistance to like, say, northern Minnesota palate versus are you trying to expand on that?
Surprisingly, no. I've been very careful. I think I've done a good job of being inclusive. How we've approached this. It's something that I harp on quite a bit with Tad. Because I let Tad kind of design the menus. And there's days that I look at the thing and I'm like, man, no. Like, no. Like, we will offend sensibilities. We haven't gotten much pushback from it. Because I'm trying to offer, if you look at our menu, we accidentally designed it where almost the entire thing's gluten-free somehow. I don't know how the heck we did that, but like we managed to like okay, like weird. And so to have those, and I wanted to focus on having vegan options and having vegetarian options. And, you know, we try to go a little bit off the beaten path. We want to show you something interesting that we're doing, but at the same time, I know where I am. And that's where, when I came up, that's why I kind of left the chocolate mousse, because we weren't seeing eye to eye on some of that stuff. And I was just like, you know, you got a certain palette up here that you're going to limit yourself. You know, I want accessibility. And that's like the core, you know, principle that we operate on. And Travell taught me that, you know, that was a fancy bet, not anymore, but back in the day when we were starting, it was $50 a head to go eat there. Somewhere around $250 now on the lower end meals, with like maybe a $300 wine supplemental or whatever you want to add to it. They've elevated it quite a bit, but they still, even to this day, I just saw one that was like $85 to have a meal there. And you got foie gras on there, and you got things on there that, you know, you generally wouldn't see at that price point and whatnot. I'm very much interested in, you know, feeding the whole instead of just pigeonholing myself into one genre, I guess.
Well, we'll see you all. Excuse me, next week, Kyle Kramer's gonna be here, but for now, we thank you, Chris Glazer.